Alexander Volkanovski versus Ilia Topuria is taking place in just a few months. But I feel like a lot of people are excited for this fight because Ilia is undefeated. Volkanovski, up until this point in the featherweight division at least, has been unbeatable. But there's a lot of disrespect being thrown on Volkanovski's name. Now, why is that? Now, a lot of people are going to say, is it because of the whole Islam fight? I want to talk about that fight and how I think that went down, but my point is, and the whole point of making this video, is that Alexander Volkanovski has been extremely disrespected by MMA fans. Like, you guys are forgetting who this guy is. Now, with that being said, there are a few question marks going into the matchup. Am I saying that Volkanovski is going to win? I'm not even going to say that's my official prediction yet because it is a close fight. However, the people that are trying to say that he is washed or that this is the beginning of the end to him or that Islam killed his career, guys, there's still a lot of question marks, so we don't know that. I'm going to break down to you guys why, and I'm going to show you guys. But before we get into that, I want to remind you guys to hit the subscribe button, like, comment, and share. We're trying to 20K by the end of the year. You guys are the best fan base in MMA, so I know you guys are going to help me with that goal. And Alexander Volkanovski, the current featherweight UFC champion, like I said, undefeated in the featherweight division, right? Has beaten every featherweight put in front of him. And obviously, this has been a really crazy year, probably the worst year in his professional career. I mean, he starts off the year with a very close loss against Islam Makhachev, where I thought Volkanovski won the fight, and so did a lot of other people, but either way, it was still very close. Performed much better than many other people expected. Then he comes back, beats Yair Rodriguez in the third round by TKO, and then at the end of the year, gets knocked out by Islam Makhachev via head kick. And I want to quickly talk about this fight. Now, a lot of people will cite this as the reason why Volkanovski is going to lose his next fight. Maybe his chin is gone, because especially around the age that Volkanovski is, we see a lot of fighters hit that 35 year, get a loss, and start becoming worse because they're aging. They're a lot slower. Reaction time just isn't there anymore. Also, your drive for the sport. I mean, Volkanovski is a guy who has now piled up title defenses, which means also piling up pay-per-view shares, which is a lot of money for being a champion, right? And plus, I'm sure he's getting paid really well, and I'm sure he got paid really well for that Islam fight. So with all that being said, yes, there are a lot of times where we do see guys get on the older side, especially when they're a champion, and start to dip out. And a lot of people have been saying this, and I want to correct this and say that I actually disagree with this point that a lot of people are making. People say Volkanovski got head kicked in that first round, right? And it doesn't matter if he would have took it on short notice or not. And to that, I have to say I disagree. I know this might be an unpopular opinion, but it's not fair to say that. Could it have happened? Absolutely, because we have seen Volkanovski with that hole in his game for a long time. I even said it in the build-up, said, hey, he's got to watch out because Islam was landing a lot of good high kicks, and Max Holloway also dropped him with a high kick back then. But my point is that we don't know Volkanovski's mindset going into that fight, right? Was the game plan to pressure a little bit early? Was the game plan to take it slow because he knew he didn't have that full cardio? Everything down to his movement probably would have been different with a full training camp, and he might have had a completely different game plan focusing on Islam, because keep in mind, Islam and Ilia are two completely different fighters, with Islam Makhachev clearly trying to get the takedown, usually fighting in more of kicking range. Ilia Topuria is more of a jiu-jitsu guy that will strike on the feet, that has a lot of power, that wants to get into the pocket with Volkanovski. So all the preparation going into the Islam fight was probably very minimal, right? You gotta say. And especially when you consider the struggles that Volkanovski had going into that fight, with his mental health stuff, with him even opening up after the fight, I find it hard to believe that there wouldn't be at least a little bit of a difference, but maybe I'm wrong. I could see Islam catching him with a head kick, absolutely, and I thought that it was possible that he can knock him out. However, in that way, I just don't think it's fair to Volkanovski to say. Honestly, in hindsight, I really wish they would have picked Dustin Poirier to fill in on short notice, just because Volkanovski deserved that full training camp, and now it's one of those things where we're not going to see that rematch. But let me move on. Ilia Topuria, he is going to be fighting Volkanovski in February. A pretty quick turnaround for Volkanovski, and that is worrying, right? Normally, if you get knocked out like that, especially even though there was ground and pound and it wasn't like out cold, it was pretty close to being out. And on this channel, I'm a big proponent of damage, looking at the damage when predicting these fights, because a fighter like Ilia Topuria, who is undefeated, who's had like 12 mixed martial arts fights, obviously has nowhere near the damage that Volkanovski has, being 35, training martial arts for a lot longer of a time, being predominantly a striker, getting dropped in a few of his fights, and recently getting knocked out. And when you look at Ilia Topuria, he's very aggressive in the pocket, he's fast, he's powerful. It's definitely a danger for Volkanovski, and obviously once you get knocked out once, it's easier going forward. But we also have seen guys that are on the older side that don't necessarily lose their chin. Last year, Leon Edwards head kicked Kamaru Usman, and Kamaru came back and had a pretty decent chin in that rematch, even though he got wobbled by that knee. And Khamzat really wasn't able to rock him either. And Khamzat is definitely a lot bigger than Kamaru. And we've seen Khamzat have power, especially in that fight with Jarrell Mershard. But I'm getting a little off topic. My point is that we don't know about Volkanovski, right? And I think that's why I'm trying to say we have to have some respect for this guy. I cannot believe people are just blindly picking Topuria based on this fact, because when you look at the matchup, I actually think this is a pretty good matchup for Volkanovski. Yes, at the same time, this is extremely dangerous because Ilia Topuria's finishing potential is like this. Even if he doesn't knock him out, maybe he drops Volkanovski, gets a submission because he has really good jiu-jitsu as well. So his finishing potential could be like that, right? It's like Oliveira. He's got lightning in his hands and his kicks while also having a killer ground game. Like, Volkanovski has to be very careful in this matchup. He cannot be reckless. Otherwise, yes, he will get finished. However, Ilia Topuria, like I said, he works best in the pocket. And we saw him in that Josh Emmett fight try to get in the pocket. And any time that he was at range, Topuria wasn't having so much success. And I find that's where Volkanovski does his best work, when he's moving around, when he's at range, when he's using the jab, when he's using simple combinations and just being so technical. And I also want to say is when you look at a lot of the guys that have fallen off, right, when they have a sudden decline, you're talking about guys like Tony Ferguson. Like, Tony was a guy who never really had such good fundamentals. He just was very awkward, relied on his chin a lot, relied on his toughness and his gas tank. Those are things that tend to slip away from you when you're first old, especially when you don't have a good base for those fundamentals. That's why you see a lot of these explosive guys, as soon as they get old, they fall off. Maybe like Kamaru Usman too. And of course, there's other factors, but power is always going to be there. Your fundamentals are normally going to be there. Maybe the speed won't be there, but your fundamentals are still going to be there. Unfortunately for Volkanovski, I mean, what wins his fights is his pure fundamentals. I mean, the guy has a high fight IQ. He's able to mix it up. I think if Volkanovski wants to win, I think he has to keep it at range, kick the legs of Ilia Topuria, use the jab and move around. Ilia Topuria, I think he has to mix it up here. I think he has to, you know, try to get in the pocket, get in those situations, go for takedowns, and really confuse Volkanovski and pressure him, because if he pressures Volkanovski, especially against the fence, and he gets Volkanovski in a situation where he's just moving side to side with his back against the fence, that's going to be extremely problematic for Volkanovski, and he could easily get caught by one of those big Topuria right hands. And Topuria has knockout power. I mean, some of his knockouts, some of the best in the featherweight division of all time. That might be a controversial take, but even when you look at Conor McGregor's knockout, even in his prime, a lot of them were from TKO. The Jose Aldo one is probably his best one, but the rest of them were a lot of follow-up shots. But Ilia Topuria, granted, he didn't fight the same competition that Conor fought, but his knockouts, I mean, a lot of the guys look dead. Like, the guys are on the floor, and we know Ilia Topuria has a chin. He got kicked in the head. So to summarize this video and to conclude this video, I'm not at all trying to say that this is a lock for Volkanovski. Pick Volkanovski. Hell, I'm not even saying I am. I'm going to look at the tape when we get closer to the fight, and on fight week I will predict it as usual. But yeah, I'm just saying to you guys that if you guys are saying Volkanovski's washed, Volkanovski is bad because of his last performance, I would say that you should probably rethink that decision, because I'm saying skill for skill, I think Volkanovski's better. However, like I said, Ilia just has a killer finishing game, and that's the problem. And I see a lot of people on Twitter right now saying, oh, Ilia Topuria is a lock, and saying crazy things like that. Like, I'm really curious to see what the betting odds will be when we get closer to the fight, because right now it's heavily in the favor of Volkanovski, but I do think a lot of people are going to go to that Topuria side and say that they think Topuria is gonna win. And I get it, man. We've seen this tale before so many times. A fighter on top, he loses one fight and then he loses a bunch and he goes on a skid and basically retires. That could be Volkanovski's fate, and for all I know, his damage could be done. I mean, this guy could get knocked out easily now. We don't know that, of course. I'm just saying, though, you also don't know that that is true, and I think that you should stop disrespecting Volkanovski. I think that there's a chance that he wins this fight, and I think it's a big chance he wins this fight. I might honestly pick him, but we're gonna see what happens. Guys, thank you guys for watching. You guys always support the channel. Make sure to check out my Ian Gary videos where I broke down, you know, the whole Ian Gary situation. I know a lot of people are kind of confused about it. Check that out, guys. Thank you guys for watching. You guys are the best fan base in MMA, and I'll see you guys in the next one.